This is the Mighty Oaks Daily Devotional, and today we are in the 74th Psalm, Psalm 74. And we talked about this a little bit not too long ago, but as you work through the Psalms one at a time, if a topic comes up a second time, or a third time, or a fourth time, you talk about it as it comes up. And here we are, Psalm 74. This is an interesting psalm. It talks about a difficult time in the nation of Israel. Verse number 1 says this, "O God, why hast thou cast us off forever? Why doth thine anger smoke against the sheep of thy pasture? Remember thy congregation which thou hast purchased of old." And it goes on. Really, it starts off with this questioning of God over the current condition of the nation of Israel. What was going on, we don't exactly know, but throughout the history of the nation of Israel, there were times of occupation and times of slavery and so many difficult times, followed by good times, followed by a rejection of God, followed by bad times. This is a cycle that the children of Israel went through often, and apparently the 74th Psalm is referring to a moment just like that one. A moment where it looks like God has thrown them off and God has walked away and God has forgotten why he saved them in the first place. We know that's not true, but that's apparently how the psalmist felt. We come into a psalm like this, and what's fascinating is that it's not simply that. It ends by, again, asking God to remember and asking God to work. But right in the middle of this psalm, we jump into verse number 12. "For God is my King of old, working salvation in the midst of the earth." Okay, so remember, the declaration has been, in the first 11 verses, are about the forgetting of God, the letting ruin come to God's chosen people, to his nation. But then a turn happens. Verse 12, "For God is my King of old, working salvation in the midst of the earth. Thou didst divide the sea by thy strength. Thou breakest the heads of the dragons in the waters. Thou breakest the heads of the Leviathan in pieces, and gavest him to be meat to the people inhabiting the wilderness. Thou didst cleave the fountain and the flood. Thou driest up mighty rivers. The day is thine, the night also is thine. Thou hast prepared the light and the sun." Verse 17, "Thou hast set all the borders of the earth. Thou hast made summer and winter." And it goes on. There is another kind of dip into God. Don't forget us. God, remember us. God, work in our nation and in our situation. But right in the middle of that, he says, God is our King, and then recounts the good things that God has done in the past. This happens over and over throughout the Old Testament. In fact, God instructs the children of Israel from time to time to make memorials, to put up landmarks, to remember the good things that he has done in places like the Red Sea and Jericho and other places. God says, do this to remember, to tell others what's happened here. We see this used throughout the Old Testament. We go into the New Testament. I think it's fascinating that men like Peter, as he preached, talked about all that God had done. Stephen, the first martyr of the Christian church, in the message that led to his martyrdom, to his stoning, talked about all that God had done. He went back to the beginning and recounted the works of God. Again and again and again, this is used, and I think the instruction for us today, again, we've talked about this recently, but it is, don't forget what God has done in your life. Certainly, we will all have difficult times. Certainly, there are moments where, if we're being honest, we feel like God has forgotten us. And in those moments, we need to pull out a piece of paper and a pen and start writing down all of the good things that God has done, from giving us life to providing sustenance and security and a place to live. As Christians, we give him thanks for paying the price for our sin, for providing the opportunity to have a relationship with him and an eternal home in heaven. The other blessings in our life, we need to recount those. Remember what God has done so that we have hope in those dark and difficult days. I love that the Bible comes back to this again and again, because I need to come back to this again and again. So here's the question. What has God done in your life? What are the good things that God has done, the blessings that he's brought into your life that you can hang on to in those moments of difficulty? maybe today you need to get out a piece of paper and a pen, write those down, and when you're done, stop and thank God for how good He's been. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow for another Mighty Oaks Daily Devotional. For more information about the Mighty Oaks Foundation and the work that we do for veterans, active duty service members, and first responders, please visit mightyoaksprograms.org.